On the agenda is a legislative initiatives discussion with our delegation. So if you could come to the table and we could begin our discussion. I did send a note to the council, and I apologize for the last minute in some of my emails to you, in that I did get back late Sunday night from dropping off our daughter at college, and we've had nothing but meetings since. So it's been one thing after the other. But if you want to refer to that, I believe city manager forwarded it to you.
About 5:48.
Yeah, so it's that email. And what the purpose of tonight's meeting is, as you may recall, and the representatives can speak better to this than I, there is a certain time frame that you have to meet in order to introduce legislation in the form of an LSR at the State House. So the idea was to have the representatives speak with us tonight so we could share some things that are on our plate and hear from them what they may be initiating this coming legislative session, and work more efficiently as a team to have the outcomes at the legislature that we would like to see. So I want to thank the representatives for being here tonight. All of these representatives work on our behalf at no pay, other than $200 for a biennium, plus gas reimbursement, mileage, whatever. So it is a lot of time and energy on their part, and it's a real commitment to the community. So thank you for that. And if you could, for the public's viewing, introduce yourselves and also any committees that you may serve on at the State House.
Okay, again, I'm John Cloutier. I live in Ward 1 and a state representative representing Sullivan County District 10, which comprises the entire city of Claremont. And I sit right now on the House Public Works and Highways Committee, which deals with a lot of road and bridge issues, public buildings. I also sit on the joint House Senate Capital Budget Overview Committee, which helps supervise the capital budget, after we pass it. And I also sit on the joint House Senate Long Range Capital Planning and Utilization Committee, which deals with the surplus sales and leases of state property.
Wow.
I'm Ray Gagnon. I represent Ward 3 in Claremont. Before I tell you who I am, I'd like to, on behalf of maybe the entire delegation, or certainly on my behalf, I would like to voice my thank you to Assistant Mayor Bergeron and Councilor Toll for the years of service that both of you have put into the city of Claremont, not just on this board, but on countless other committees and actions, and you both will be missed. So
Thank you.
I'd like to just add that. If some of you who have been around for a number of years will remember that we used to have periodic meetings with the council and the school board when Mr. Pope was the mayor in particular, and they were really kind of nice feel-good meetings. I commend the mayor for thinking of it in a much bigger picture, because what she's really talking about and suggesting is that we look at how we, along with yourselves and the school board and others in Claremont and like-minded allies around the state, pass legislation that would help Claremont. So I think this is a good idea. It's a great opportunity. I serve on the Executive Departments and Administration, which is referred to as ED&A, and for almost a split second I couldn't remember what ED&A stood for. But it's a great committee in the sense that it deals with licensing and regulations of everything from fire codes to nurses and state agencies. So it's a committee that doesn't get a lot of attention, but that's what I do.
I'm John O'Connor from Ward 2, represent District 4 as a state representative, and my committee is Children and Family Law, and we deal with juvenile justice and divorce, child custody, those social aspects. And I'm first term representative.
Well, thank you
Thank you.
again.
Could I
For-
just add,
yes.
though, that what you were talking about is the window to submit legislations is coming up very fast,
Mhm.
and it's September 6th to the 22nd. So this is very opportune, very timely.
Great. I did fail to mention earlier, I did invite Senator Hennessy, but she's out of town, so she could not be here with us. But we'll discuss that during next steps, what we might do after this discussion. So what I did send to you late this afternoon, and I sent to the representatives very early this morning, was a list of retained bills that I was involved in testifying at, that are in various committees, and they're to be reported out of committee by November 16th, I believe, with their recommendations. So we all have the list, and if I need to review it, I'm happy to do so. I spoke about this maybe 2 meetings ago, maybe last meeting. But basically, they are, well, SB 247, that's the bill pertaining to the childhood screening and prevention of lead poisoning. SB 193 was the only one we testified in opposition to because that dealt with school choice and how they were going to fund school choice by removing 90% of the education stabilization grants. And then HB 413, which is about the New Hampshire retirement system. We had a presentation about that and the fact that the state does not contribute at all into that New Hampshire retirement system. And then HB 525, which is the 4% annual reduction in the education stabilization grants. So I guess, and this may not be a comprehensive list of those bills that are being retained currently that would impact Claremont. It's the ones that I'm most familiar with. So what I would like to hear from you as individuals is when these bills are retained in committee and they are working on recommendations that they have to report out for a floor vote in the following legislative session. How do you think we can best combine our forces and our energy to get to perhaps persuade what the recommendation would be from the committee?
I think from my experience, Madam Mayor, that the council needs to bombard the committees, whoever have the bills, and some of them, the House Finance Committee has some of them, and I don't know, House Education has others, is to bombard all the members of the committee, well, especially, through the chairman, but if necessary, every committee member. Email probably would be the least expensive, but snail mail, come to the public hearings, and there'll be at least 1 or 2 hearings, and you need to sort of, I can help the council, but there'll be a calendar, we have a House calendar that starting in September will come out every week with the hearings that the committee schedule on these retained bills. I believe the deadline is either late October, early November. For all committees, there's a deadline, and I'm not sure at the exact date. And committees, it varies according to the committee. If they're ready to vote on a retained bill, they will vote on it when a date is set, and the chairman will announce that. Because to some extent, it's what power the chair of each committee has.
Okay.
But the chair should be, if that person is a good chair, they're going to be consulting with their committee, talking, are we ready for a vote on this bill? And basically, they're going to decide whether the bill ought to pass with amendment, refer for further study, or inexpedient to legislate, which basically says we reject the bill. Those are the only 4 possibilities that each committee has.
And that recommendation goes to the full floor.
Then goes to the full House in early January. The
Right.
very first thing the full House does in January is take up all the retained bills from 2017. So that's the very first thing we will do when we come back. And the only other thing, I think the governor did veto one minor bill that will probably take it up because it's just a minor bill. But anyway, getting back to retained bills, that's really the very first thing we do. We have to finish the work from 2017 before we deal with the bills that have been filed for 2018.
And in my committee, we met yesterday, and we looked at our retained bills. We had a lot of retained bills. So we identified which ones would go to which committees. Some had already been assigned to subcommittees. And we're in the process now of setting up meetings and hearings on those bills. So I think each committee does it differently. My chairman jumped the gun because she's going on vacation, so she wanted to get this all cleared up before she left, you know. But I think they will all be doing that, and the journal, the calendar that John's talking about is online, so, and it comes out every Thursday.
And they're already starting to come out? Or
It's
does it
been
wait till
every 2
September?
weeks during the summer, but
Okay.
what he's saying is that
In September,
should be-
every week.
Yeah, it'll be a weekly announcement, and that's when you'll see this subcommittee is dealing with 413 or whatever, you know.
So what's the best method for us collectively or individually to not only communicate with the chair of the committee our position, and when we do have some letters drafted up anyway, signed by, some of them are signed by both the council and the school board, and the city manager and the superintendent. How do you recommend that we do that and keep you informed? Because I know it's quite helpful not only for us to give them our position, whether it's via email or in person at a hearing, but it's also very effective if we can ensure that you guys are available to also testify or sign the blue sheet.
Well, my advice is come down and conquer. Come down and testify before the committee that you have an interest in. A lot of times, I mean, I know these gentlemen probably say the same thing, we get inundated with letters upon letters. But it's the verbal testimony in the committee hearings that resonate with some of the other representatives. I know it does with me.
Okay.
So that would be, I know I met the mayor down there with City Manager Sandgate, and I know that day was an interesting day. That was a very crowded day, but you got in there, you testified, and you get to sign the blue sheets. But that's my recommendation, not just for the mayor or the city manager, but everybody. Come on down. Squeaky wheel gets the most oil, and a lot of times we don't have that block, that representation that Manchester or Concord or Nashville do, because they come down there with busloads of people, and that gets noticed, that gets recognized.
Any letter that comes with a city of Claremont or a municipality stationery or school board stationery will sort of go to the top of the list, and the chair will probably will most certainly make sure that everyone will see that. But Representative O'Connor is correct that the physical presence of the mayor or the manager or any of the city council takes on and we say this, and you guys look at me, and I remember when I sat on the council, I thought, come on, big deal. But you're important. See, you're the elected officials for the city of Claremont. So if you show up and you say, I'm the assistant mayor Bergeron, and I'd like to talk about fire safety, then you're going to make sure they're going to pay a little more attention to that. Especially in his case, where he would say, I'm a retired firefighter, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, that's what I'm saying is that, or Representative Dameron, I'm Councilor Dameron, in regards to education. I mean, but that means a lot more when you show up and you're the elected officials for your community. So he's correct when he says that.
Okay. Councilor Pope.
But could I ask?
Yes.
I would say how to share the information is that most of this is going to be done by email. You're going to write to the chair of the committee or the subcommittee and the members of that subcommittee. CC the four of us.
Okay.
Right.
CC the four of us. And I know we do get like thousands of emails sometimes, and what I'll do is, I scan right to the bottom and say, where are they from? And if it's somebody from Claremont, or if it's somebody local in the area, then I'll pay attention. But if it's somebody from California who wants to talk about carrying or whatever, I ignore that. So.
Okay. Counselor Pope?
So you mentioned a committee house calendar earlier, has all the hearings. Where's that posted, and does that get sent to you guys? A link or something like that in an email that could be sent to us?
Yeah, it's sent every week. We legislators get it it's emailed to us, okay? But it's also, any citizen can go, and it's WW, because we're officially known as the General Court.
Yeah.
It's www.GenCourt, .state.nh.us, something like that. I believe that's in fact, I think I have.
So I guess my other question will be, could one of you guys email that to us? Or give us
I can do that.
You
Well, we
can
can
get it
email
by
it to
going
you.
through nh.gov as
Yeah.
well.
That's what I've
Is it
been
right
doing.
in the
The
representative?
Municipal Association will also share this too.
Right.
That's another link that you should also tap into.
I get
is
that every
the
week from
New
them.
Hampshire Municipal
Yeah.
Association. But the calendar it comes out around 5 or 6 o'clock every Thursday. And it's just go to New Hampshire General Court, Google New Hampshire General Court, and it'll come out and you just click on it and see it. It's there and it's faithfully done. They used to mail us each a hard copy, but unless you personally request it, they will only do it through email now. So it's funny, when they mailed it to all 400 members, I used to get it on Saturday morning. Now, there's maybe 25, 50 members in the House that want a real hard copy. We get it usually on Tuesday, which is, I don't understand why, but, so.
So let me make the commitment to the council. What I'll do is I'll list all of the retained bills that we know we've testified on, we have interest in, and I'll send you the link, and then the council can follow when those are coming up for hearings, or if I see it first, I'll email the council. But from now on, if we communicate with the state, the general court committees, we will CC our representatives so that you're aware.
Yeah, please do so. It's definitely very important to keep us in the loop.
Of the bills that you identified, the one that to me just jumps right out is House Bill 413.
Oh, yeah.
When the New Hampshire retirement system was established, they went around to all the cities and towns and school districts and county governments and said, would you join the New Hampshire retirement system? Because, volume, the more people members, the greater it would be, and so forth. And they promised, the state promised, all of those subdivisions, the counties, the towns, the states, cities and the school districts, that they would pay 35% of all your employee retirement costs. And that was pretty good for a long time. And then they started whittling away. And then just a few years ago, they took it totally away. So when people yell at you as to why your costs gone up, well, 35% is right there, just in your retirement costs for all your city employees, or county employees, or school district employees. That was a promise that was made by the state. And 413 doesn't put the whole 35% back, but it opens the door, and it's 15%. So the state will then start paying 15% of the retirement costs. That's going to help you right off the bat in doing your budget and doing your property tax amounts. So that's a real benefit. And it passed committee by one vote.
Oh, my goodness.
It was amazing. And then it passed the House floor, So now they're really in a bind, and there are certain powers that would love to bury this. So that's the bill that really needs some attention. And I would suspect that the Municipal Association will tell you the same thing. Check with them. But I think they would say that Judy Silver and people will say the same thing.
Do you have copies of the letters that have been drafted by myself and then
Yes.
signed by, so
We
you do
did,
have that?
well, it came to my committee, so that's why I remember seeing that. I don't know if
I
you
don't
guys did.
remember receiving it.
Yeah, I don't know if they did, but I know I saw it because it came to my committee.
So then I will also ensure that any letter that I may draft, or the council may draft, or the superintendent may draft, whoever, that you're CC'd.
Okay, yes.
It's very difficult, for those who have not served at the State House, once that session starts, I mean, sometimes there's 800, 900 bills coming
Yeah,
at
it's-
you.
It's chaotic.
It's very hard to keep up, so.
It definitely is. We go very fast. We don't have a lot of time, frankly.
So the other, so I think we pretty much understand how the retained bills are gonna be dealt with. The next thing I'd like to talk about is those items that the members of the city council would like to see perhaps as an LSR. Now, an LSR does not have to be complete. You can just put it in and within the time frame and then work on the text of it between the time you submit it and the legislative session starts. So it doesn't have to be a fleshed out idea. It can be just a marker, correct? At this
Yes.
point in time. So who would like to start? Because I know we've talked about things over the years. City manager, I know you have something you would like to present.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. And it might fall within the committee of Representative Gagnon, because it is sort of a regulation. So when I worked in Massachusetts, when we were doing code enforcement and we had deficient properties, usually owned by absentee owners, and they were, in some cases, these absentee owners, especially after the foreclosure crisis, were national banks that sometimes didn't know that they had the assets on their books. And so it would be very difficult to keep these properties maintained. And in many cases, when the property deteriorates, it can affect the values of abutting properties. It can create health hazards for abutting properties and the public. And it's very difficult for the public to understand how many restrictions we as a municipality have when dealing with private property. But one of the tools in Massachusetts is called receivership. And when a property gets to a certain level of lack of maintenance, disrepair, danger to the public, you can petition the court in Massachusetts to appoint a receiver, which is a person that has the capability to fix that property. And then they're made whole for their outlay of expenditure to do so by a court order that allows them to recoup the rents from the property, or in some cases foreclose on the property if their repairs exceeded the fair market value. And that was probably the most effective tool in Massachusetts to getting absentee owners to maintain their properties and their investments, or they face the financial penalty of perhaps losing it or having to have a lien placed on their property. If they don't want to listen to us, if they don't want to maintain their property in our community and they don't even live here, we have to hit them in the wallet. It's really the only thing that makes them pay attention.
Yeah, it might come to my committee or municipal and county government, but that sounds like sounds like a good idea. I would certainly like to explore that.
Okay? Yes, Counselor Damron.
Yeah, I'm curious. We had many presentations on current use before us, with Claremont having a pretty high percentage of properties and acreage and so forth out in current use, and a very large portion of current use presently being held by out-of-state owners. And I've got to believe that Claremont is different from, let's say, Manchester in that regard. So a Manchester or Concord perhaps wouldn't care less, but it hurts a small community like Claremont with a lot of available acreage. Is there anything being discussed within the legislature at all about reworking or redoing in some manner the formulas and the methods for going about valuing property that's held in current use? I think we all appreciate the fact that we're going to keep some property unspoiled and so on and so forth, but it just strikes me as a tremendous disparity between some communities and communities like ours. And I would think there's got to be something that can be done legislatively to try to balance that scale.
Well, I know the subject was breached. Representative Gauthier, I believe that was for his committee this session,
Okay.
and it was being discussed. So I know that there are things that are being talked about. And again, the dilemma is what you say. You have places like Nashua and Manchester that have very little of land in that situation. So they don't have the support
Yeah.
that the support's not there for what we need to do. But I do know that that was being discussed.
Okay. So whatever committees and
It's
representative.
municipality, I believe. is-
Municipal and county government, both of those I think would probably be there. But they have an excellent chairman. He's really a very good guy, and it's certainly something that the municipal association that you guys are a member of. You know, there are some agencies and entities that work very closely with certain standing committees, and that is one that I used to be the vice chair of municipal and county, and I remember the municipal association was almost seen as adjunct staff. I mean, so the relationship from your, you know, and you pay dues to them. I mean, they're a good outfit. I mean, they'll work with you, and I think that's the next step. Going to the next step is who do we identify as part of a strategy? Who we bring? Let's say those are the two issues. Let's say, you know, I'm not limiting it to that, but think of strategy of who do we want to bring in on our team, and that would be one that I would think. You know, what do you think, John?
Yeah, I'm sorry that Representative Goff is not here tonight, but he's talked about this issue, to be honest with you. He wanted to do something, so I don't know, he may be considering filing legislation, but him not being here tonight, I don't know whether he's going to do it and how the legislation is, so I hope if we have a follow-up meeting in the next few weeks that he is able to come, because he might be able to describe what he's doing. But I'm open to any ideas because obviously you're going to get some opposition, I think, from landowners, the agricultural community, maybe the environmental to some extent. I'll be blunt with you.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
But nevertheless, because of the property tax issue, you know, we can't, I mean, and one of your former city councilors raised this too at a council meeting. So I'm very concerned. If we've got to reduce property taxes, and if we can't do it any other way, we've got to seriously look, I think, at current use, especially with Claremont's situation.
It's particularly galling that such a large percentage represents out-of-state owners
Yeah.
who really have no vested interest.
That's a legitimate question. Maybe we need to curb out-of-state use, property owners' use of current use.
Okay.
Councilor Kowalski?
I have the same concern as Councilor Dameron, and that was my one, is current use, but maybe it could be looked at overall land mass of town or city in a certain percentage, and then it'd be capped.
Right, we're
would work.
70% current use.
70%.
18,000 acres.
Okay. Thank you for that figure. That is
What does it
huge.
generate income? It's a low figure, right?
It's very low.
$24,000 a year.
Salem has 2%.
So, okay.
Councilor Pope?
Yeah, one of the big things I'm looking at that have been talked to about by a lot of people who are in the manufacturing, light industrial, even offices and things we've talked about at the council is electric production. I'm not talking about so much Northern Pass, which comes from Hydro-Quebec, but actually the production of electricity within the state of New Hampshire. there's been a substantial loss of electrical production within New England as a whole in just the last 10 years. And we are also paying some extraordinary rates, some of the highest in the country throughout our entire state and even through Vermont and such. So I guess my thing, I can't really suggest a bill right now, but is to find ways to support bills that would help incentivize or allow for electrical production on either the mass scale that's in a reasonable amount and environmentally safe, or some of these other things, just to get it going. I know there was a bill last year, and I'm trying to remember all the details, that actually would have cut back on the amount that producers would be paid. For example, if someone had solar panels on their roof and was selling back to the company in non-use, they were actually gonna, the bill would have actually cut back on how much that person would be paid from the companies. And so that kind of a thing maybe look out for. But I think the thing to help in economic development, and I hear this from down south, the company I work with just south of here, and also from people within the town and even our municipal people, is that we need that. We need that
Rates are
kind
so
of thing.
high. Rates are terrible.
I mean, it's just terrible. And I would encourage you, if you see these kind of bills, support them, or at least send them this way, or make us aware of these kind of bills so we could see it. Anything you can do in that way is going to help us all, taxpayers for the community, industry that might want to move here, such on and so forth. I've said enough, but I think you get it.
No, you're right. I mean, we met with people from Wayland, we've met with people from Rugers and other companies. And they've been very clear to us. They're saying that, you know, their competitors that are in the southern part of the state, southern part of the country, don't have the high energy costs, you know. And we've met with I've had some meetings with some folks on the state level who are telling me things like, you know, New Hampshire has always had a diversity in energy sources. We've never been dependent on any one, you know, source, you know. And we're very quickly becoming overly dependent on propane and natural gas. I mean, just natural gas, not propane. And that's the whole push for the Northern Pass, is to broaden the diversity so that we're not dependent on, you know, one thing. And if you think of the natural gas, we are the end of the pipeline, because the pipeline's coming from the west, and, you know.
But even Northern Pass is still coming from Hydro-Quebec, so we're still a little bit dependent outside of our region.
Yeah, but I would rather buy gas from my cousins in Quebec than people who raise sand.
Well, like I said before, in the New Hampshire area,
You know.
back to that
Yeah,
statement I made.
I remember a number of years ago when the council, I guess during the Mayor Whipple days, there was some talk of the city starting its own power plant. There was a building somewhere on the river that there was some talk of actually starting and generating your own electricity. Now, I don't know if that's still possible or whether that's something that can be done, but I know the whole idea of starting their own power plant wasn't so much to do it, but to have a position of power in negotiating rates. And it never went more than just the talking stage. I don't know, you remember?
I remember it.
You know, it never went beyond that talking stage, but that was a good idea. That was about 10, 15 years ago, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it was.
I mean, if that would have happened then, we wouldn't be talking about this now. So maybe it's something for the city to look into.
Councilor Raymond?
I think we put the windmills on Green Mountain, right?
That's right. It's another thing, sure, absolutely.
But anyway, my question was, a few years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, but the rooms and meals tax had a share that the revenue came back to the city, which went away. And I don't know if there's any talk in any bills of getting that back in so we can get our share of that back too.
It was only suspended.
I'm not aware, Counselor, any talk of returning rooms and meals money back, unfortunately. But unfortunately, that's the state at this time. I mean, obviously, we did have some money returned in surplus money. That's, you know, for our roads, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes.
Right.
But I hear of no talk as of today and it would probably mainly, the initiative would come from the governor's office about sharing rooms and meals money at the present time. I may be wrong.
But a percentage of it we did get before.
I think you're talking about shared revenue, not meals and rooms.
Okay, all right,
Shared revenue was that $500,000.
okay.
Right.
I knew it was a big number.
The room and meals tax was originally, back with first Governor Sununu, was fully designated for cities and towns. That's what you're talking about. And at one time, everything from the room and meals tax went back to the cities and towns. And it's what Mr. Folger was talking about, is that sometimes the state tends to be sort of Indian givers. And that's a good example of what happened. Just like the retirement, 35%. Those are examples where the state has reneged on its promises.
So-
That's what you're talking about, I think.
So what actions could we take, though, legislatively, to at least, there's more and more communities in the situation we are now than ever before across the state. So how do we, and that came across clearly when we were testifying for all of these bills, either in opposition or in support of these bills that address the continued reduction of education funding support at the local level. So how do we get that back on the burner? Because the economy has changed. Some of the things that were done in 2009, it began, I think, in 2009 with the reduction in the state's contribution to the retirement system. I think that's when that started, in 2009. Well, a lot's happened in the last 8 years. So maybe we can't get back to where we were, but how do we at least consider the possibility of recapturing some of that? Much like HB 413 is a partial reinstatement of.
Yeah.
Because I know the state is dealing with its own budget constraints, but what was true in 2009 is not true in 2017.
It's also how the state is structured. I mean, that lady from the lottery said it took 10 years for them to convince a majority, that the idea of a lottery wasn't a bad idea. I mean, 10 years it took. And that was revenue coming in. That wasn't revenue going from the state. The system is built so that, everything is a very slow, pensive process, and that's being polite.
Yeah, but we have to start somewhere.
Yeah, where it takes forever, John has bills that he's submitted every year for 15 years, and,
Sometimes it wins, but
yeah,
sometimes
instead of
it
getting a
don't.
few more votes, and every year you'll resubmit the bill, and it'll maybe get another 20, 50, or 60 members on board, and gradually by 10 years, like a lottery, they'll buy into it. That's the frustration, and I don't want to waste time talking about frustration. I think what we really need to think about is the strategy on how to make these happen. And the ones that you've given us tonight, just those 2 or 3 that you've given, are really, the current users, I'm telling you, is going to be a heavy lift. That's not going to be easy. But the other 2 were substantive, and we could think of who could we find as partners and allies and supporters of that. I suspect Coos County, Grafton County, even Laconia, Belknap County, Carroll County, all of those rural counties, even Chester County, must be in sort of the same boat as us when it comes to current
Oh, they
use. All the cities and towns of any major proportion might be in a similar situation that the city manager mentioned. Let's sit down and map out a strategy. And I said to you privately that, not that Senator Hennessy couldn't come, but they have different rules. They're the same general court, they're the other body, but they have a whole set of rules. Like their time frame for submitting legislation in LSRs is a lot longer than ours, which is interesting because they're only 24 members, but they have a longer time. They have a whole different system of, so maybe the plan might be to introduce the bill through the Senate, and that might be the way. You know, those are the ideas, some of the ideas, and I think we need to have a real strategy session on how to do that.
Ms. Walter, you wanted to say something?
I know that in some of my finance circles and the threads that we have, that there are other communities that are also talking about the loss of revenue. And one of the things that one of the towns had talked about was the meals and rooms tax has never been funded at the 40% that it's supposed to be. I think we're at 26% or something like that. But one of the things they talked about was increasing the meals and rooms tax by 0.25%, but to have that money come directly back to the cities and towns. So I don't know whether that's an LSR that might be talked about, but I think that there might be enough, because it would benefit all the cities and towns, not just, the problem we have is that if you have a vote for every 3,000 people, Western New Hampshire doesn't have enough population to make any difference to the eastern side of the state. But something like that, which would benefit all of them, might stand a better chance to get your foot in the door and get some of that money, and it would be dedicated where they wouldn't be taking it back away from you or finding another way to spend it.
Good suggestion. So we're out of time for tonight, but I'd like to get the council's opinion on how to do the next step. I do agree with Representative Gagnon that we do need to have a strategy session if we're going to be effective. There's different ways to go about this, and we do need to bring in other stakeholders into the process. I don't know how you want to do that. I know everybody's time is very valuable. I don't know if you want the full council at this work session, part of the council at the work session, whoever's available. I'd rather not, given the time frame that we have to operate in, I'd rather not have to commit to having all of us in attendance to have it happen, because I don't want to miss the time frame. So either I would like to either commit to a date tonight and just make it happen, and you can tell me whether you want it to happen with the majority of the council or you don't. Or you just want to leave it open-ended so that the work can go forward. And if you can make it, you can make it. I'll keep you posted on what happens. I mean, it's up to you. But the time frame was, what was that again?
September 6th is when we can start filing. Through September 22nd is the last date for House of Representatives. The Senate's on a different schedule.
So this was meant to be an introductory period, really. And I would rather have the strategic session not on a council night, because I think we need to have the flexibility to go as long as we need to go. And there'll be more work to be done, but we'll have had the LSR submitted or an action plan formulated, and we can build upon that work after that time frame is closed.
And even if you don't have everything fleshed out in an LSR, you could give it to us, we could file it with legislative services, that they're lawyers we have to work with, and they give us some time. So if you haven't quite finished what your idea is by the 22nd, please get it to us so we can file it within the window, and then we'll work with legislative services to get the main idea, and then we have to tweak it and everything, working with the staff who are lawyers at the Office of Legislative Services.
Okay,
That's what I would suggest. But obviously, a strategy session sometime in September would be most essential.
Okay, Councilor Toll?
I'm thinking that because rooms and meals, because it's affecting a lot of municipalities, that if we contacted the municipal people and find out what's already being out there.
The NHMA?
Yeah,
Yep.
to figure out what's already been written up, but I'm sure they're working on that.
Yep.
So then we could gain some speed and catalyst our own, or combine the wordings and things.
I can contact them tomorrow and get you guys that information.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. I mean,
And I'll be talking to them as well, so between the two of us.
the LSR is really just putting some key words, legislation to address the room meals tax, boom, that's all you have to put in, but then the next step is, okay, And John's correct, the legislative services, they're very helpful, they're really good people, they want to do the right thing, but if you leave it up to them, they're going to interpret what you said. If you can give them as much information ahead of time or during the process of what you want to go into that bill and how it should work, then they're really happy, you know? And what we'll do is come out with a bill that we like. And in the meantime, the 3 or 4 of us and 5 of us counting Senator Hennessy can work with identifying other legislators who will say, gee, this is an issue in my town or in my county. This is something that makes sense. And then we can start building momentum and then have as many people sign off as a supporter of the bill. That's a great technique. And 100, 200 people sign off saying they're supporting the bill.
Councilor Pulaski?
Couple things, just to touch upon receivership. Mobile home parks, according to state law, can be placed in receivership if they're deemed to be a hazard by the court. And I was only looking up manufactured housing or mobile home parks because that's an issue we face here, and we're not the only ones. So we can't tax the land, we can only tax the mobile home. So now we're stuck between a rock and a hard place that basically you don't have to pay that tax bill because there's really not much that we can do about it. So we end up, so that's one that's really important here. The taxation of mobile homes and how that's gone about. And another part of that is, and this happened in town, is so even the mobile home park has an issue because now they go to get a demo permit to remove something from their property. They're not the owners of it either. So they can't even get the demolition permit. So now you just have a rotting mobile home in a park in the city.
So when would you guys like to meet, and how do you want to meet? Do you want to commit to meeting as a whole, or do you want to meet with those that are available for a strategy work session?
I think those that are available,
Okay.
just have a strategy session, those who can make it.
Okay, I think it's important to get Senator Hennessy involved in this, so
And I
could,
think we should reach out to Representative Gothier.
Yes.
I
so
think we did.
maybe I'll work with the 5 of you to kind of figure out what dates everybody's available.
Yeah, the dates, it might be better for me in the evening, but I mean, that's the only thing after 5 or 6, something like that.
Okay, 'cause
But, yeah, and just one last thing about what Representative Kowalski is talking about is mobile homes is don't make it confusing. When the manager was suggesting to me, or suggesting the idea of receivership, I was thinking inner city, I was thinking a lot of the large buildings that are owned by outside owners, and that's what I was thinking about. And then you sort of threw a curveball when you added municipal manufactured housing. And I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but don't keep adding on, make it separate bills.
Mine was separate.
Make a bill
I'm looking
dealing with
at
that.
the taxation of mobile home.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a separate.
Yeah, good.
So is the council comfortable with me? There's coordinating with our delegation just to set up a time, and I'll keep you
Sure.
posted, and whoever can be there will be there. Does that sound good?
That's fine, thank you.
Well, I appreciate your time. We took more of your time than we had scheduled for, but I think we're moving in the right direction. Councilor Cross.
In an effort to keep the public informed, is it possible that when we get the calendar of bills, can we post that out here on the bulletin board at least? I know that people I talk to in the community, for one, have a hard time figuring out, just as they do, who's my counselor. So maybe we can help direct towards the representatives, and then just anything that, Mr. Folta, would you come in and read that hanging on the bulletin board when you're in here?
I'd prefer it on the website.
So,
Well, that's, I think, weren't you going to look into that? I mean,
Can we do a link on the website to the calendar?
I can look into it.
And perhaps also have at the library a hard copy. They could print out one copy every week for,
Oh, yep, that is very doable.
okay. All right, well, is there anything else that you want to say before we depart and move on to the next?
I like that idea, though, of making it as informative as possible. And maybe that meeting should also be announced as being open to the public as well, because you,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no?
And I think, yeah, we'll keep working with you, follow up, but the important thing is communicating. But if we can get started this fall laying the groundwork, not only the retained bills, but what we want to do next year,
Yep.
that'll be helpful. At least we can give it our best shot. And I think the main thing is try to reach out to other allies, try to get as many allies, including, because Claremont's not the only community obviously struggling with property taxes and electric rates and things like that.
And my advice is, any subject that you're interested in, get down to Concord. Testify before those committees. It really carries a lot of weight. You know, Council was talking about just how you're coming down. I know in deliberations, when we're talking about those, we really talk about the people that took the time to come there and testify. And that, you know, believe it or not, carries a lot of weight.
Well, we have been, I mean, we did a lot of testifying between the school side and this side, and overall, I mean, we were successful. A lot were retained, but the ones that weren't, they got passed. So, and as a result, Claremont's receiving money both for
So you
the,
saw the benefits of it.
yeah, yeah, so. Counselor?
I just wanted to add to that comment. I have been down to Concord several times when I was with New Hampshire Retail Grocers testifying. I think I can remember the first time I had to testify, I was scared to death, shaking. But it works, and it's the way to go. And any counselor running for this next election should be thinking about that also, being able to be available to go down and testify, because it is very, very well needed to pass some of these things, so.
I think on a related matter, I was just thinking as you were talking, I can recall that Scott Pope, when he was the mayor, was on a first-name basis with the governor. I mean, they really hit it off, the two of you. I mean, you guys liked each other, and you know, I mean, there was a real connection. There was a real connection, and that was because he had come to Claremont, he had met you, he had talked to you, and you know, and certainly Mayor Lovett's doing the same thing too. But
We had to go to Amherst to see the governor.
Said to maybe getting the governor up here to Claremont, we would certainly support that. We've been trying on a couple of other areas to.
Because I think he needs to meet with us, see our community, see our successes, but also find out about our challenges.
To get into his attention, yeah.
He owes me more.
Yeah.
Well, Representative O'Connor, I've
says he
been
can
trying
deliver.
for
I'll
2
deliver.
months.
I'll make a call.
2
So I'll
months.
see what I can do.
Yeah, remember his brother used to come up quite a bit too, John Johnson, who used to be.
I tell you, I was in awe. I didn't know any of those people, Scott. You had a friendship with them that was, and I would sit and, how did you do that, you know? And it was a real friendship. It was a real bond. I would bump into the governor. How's my favorite mayor? And that's how he'd refer to you as, my favorite mayor in the state. I mean, you know, and that was because somehow they hit it off.
They reciprocated to each other.
Yeah, and there's something to be said there. I mean, to get those guys up here, the federal delegation this week was excellent.
Why don't we sign a letter requesting and helping, trying to get the governor to come?
I've already, my next step is just to call Executive Counselor Kenny. It's,
Okay.
I've spoken directly to the governor. He had planned on coming here in August. I have to work through his scheduler, and let me just say that she has not been the most responsive person.
But,
So,
you know,
it's very aggravating.
Councilman Kenny,
Because the city manager and I were both talking to him.
Personal connections. You know, you're retired military, he's retired military. The couple of times we've been together, you know, he and you get along very well. And I think it's very helpful to think in those terms of who has good connections and rapport, and I think that's how we promote Claremont.
Okay, so thank you for your time.
Lots
Thank
to
you, Madam
think
Mayor,
about.
members of the City Council.
Thank you, very informative.
You're welcome.